I sat at the mahogany dinner table in my parents' dining room, watching candlelight flicker across the anniversary cake Mom had spent all afternoon baking. The whole family was there celebrating 40 years of marriage, and everything felt perfect. Until Dad cleared his throat with that serious expression I remembered from childhood punishments. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table as he stood up, wine glass in hand, looking directly at me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Eddie, your mother and I have been talking, and we've decided you'll be sharing your 3-bedroom house with Marcus and his family. You have extra rooms and they need help right now." The words hit me like a freight train, and I felt my chest tighten as every single person at the table nodded. Like this was already a done deal, like my opinion didn't matter at all. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity before I found my voice. "Dad, I appreciate that Marcus is going through a tough time, but I value my privacy. I worked really hard to buy that house, and I need my space." The reaction was immediate and brutal. Mom's eyes filled with tears, and she dabbed at them with her napkin like I had personally wounded her. "Eddie, how can you be so selfish when your brother is in crisis? This is about family loyalty, something I thought we raised you to understand." Marcus leaned back in his chair, playing his role to perfection. His shoulders slumped as he stared at his plate, the picture of a defeated man. "It's okay, Mom. I understand Eddie has his bachelor lifestyle to maintain. We'll figure something else out, even if it means the kids sleeping in the car another week." His wife, Jennifer, shot me a look that could freeze water. Her lips pursed in disapproval. "Some people just don't understand what real responsibility looks like, Marcus. Not everyone has children to worry about." My father's voice boomed across the table, echoing off the walls like thunder. "Son, I'm disappointed in this attitude. When I was your age, family came first, no questions asked. You're acting like a stranger, not a brother." The guilt was suffocating, wrapping around my throat like a noose. That's when the phone call started. Aunt Patricia's voice crackled through the speaker as Mom dialed her number, explaining the situation with dramatic flair. "Eddie, sweetheart, I'm shocked at your reaction. When your cousin Derek was struggling, we opened our doors immediately. Family means sacrifice, and right now you're being heartless." Uncle Robert chimed in from the background, his gravelly voice adding weight to the judgment. "That boy has gotten too comfortable living alone. He needs to step up like a real man would." Jennifer's mother called next, her sharp tone cutting through the room as she spoke on speakerphone. "I raised Jennifer to value family above everything else. These children need stability, and Eddie has the means to provide it. What kind of uncle puts his comfort before his nieces and nephews?" Sarah's grip on my hand tightened, and I could see the discomfort written across her face. But she remained silent, probably sensing the family dynamics at play. My cousin Derek arrived unannounced, having been summoned by text messages flying around the family group chat. He walked in shaking his head, looking at me like I was a disappointing child. "Eddie, man, what's going on with you? When my apartment flooded last year, you didn't hesitate to let me crash for 2 weeks. Now your own brother needs help, and you're acting like he's asking you to donate a kidney." Marcus looked up from his plate with perfect timing, his voice cracking just enough to sound vulnerable. "I lost my job 3 weeks ago, Eddie. The eviction notice came yesterday. Ashley and Tyler don't understand why we can't go home. They keep asking me what they did wrong." He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. "I never thought my own brother would turn his back on us when we needed him most." The room fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Every eye was on me, waiting for my response, expecting me to crumble under the collective pressure. Jennifer wiped away a tear that seemed to appear on cue, her voice trembling with practiced emotion. "We're not asking for charity, Eddie. We just need a place to land while Marcus gets back on his feet. Surely your 3-bedroom house has room for a family in crisis." Then came the revelation that made my blood run cold. Mom reached into her purse and pulled out a folder filled with real estate listings and furniture catalogs. We've been looking at bunk beds for the children's room, and Jennifer found some lovely curtains that would work perfectly in your guest bathroom. She's already measured the windows. My stomach dropped as I realized they had been planning this for weeks, discussing my private space like it was community property. Jennifer's face lit up as she opened one of the catalogs, pointing to colorful bedroom sets and storage solutions. I thought we could convert your home office into a playroom for Ashley and Tyler. They need space to spread out their toys and do homework. It would be perfect for them. She spoke with the confidence of someone who had already made the decision, not someone asking for a favor. Marcus nodded eagerly, adding fuel to the fire. And that 2-car garage of yours would be perfect for our storage unit items. We've got furniture and belongings we couldn't fit in our last apartment. It's just sitting in storage, costing us money we don't have. The casual way he discussed redistributing my living space made my head spin. The final blow came when Dad pulled out his phone and showed me photos of Marcus's children sleeping in the back seat of their old sedan. These are your nieces and nephew Eddie. Look at them. Look at where they're sleeping tonight while you have empty rooms sitting unused. The guilt crashed over me like a tidal wave, and I felt my resistance crumbling under the weight of family expectations and emotional manipulation. But the moment that truly shattered my resolve was overhearing Jennifer whisper to her mother on the phone while stepping into the kitchen. He's going to cave. Marcus was right about the family loyalty angle. Eddie's always been the soft one who can't stand disappointing people. We'll be moved in by the weekend. Her words hit me like a physical blow, but by then the damage was done, and I found myself nodding, slowly, agreeing to something that felt like signing my own prison sentence. The weight of everyone's expectations pressed down on my shoulders like a lead blanket. I took a deep breath, feeling Sarah's supportive squeeze, and forced the words out. All right. 3 months maximum. Just until Marcus finds another job and gets back on his feet. The immediate transformation in the room was jarring. Smiles replaced frowns, and suddenly I was the hero instead of the villain. Marcus jumped up and wrapped me in a bear hug that felt more like a victory celebration than gratitude. Shucks. I knew you'd come through, little brother. This means everything to us. Jennifer's demeanor shifted completely, her cold stare melting into what looked like genuine relief, though something in her eyes still felt calculating. Mom clasped her hands together, tears of joy replacing the earlier guilt-inducing ones. Oh, Eddie, this is who you really are. I'm so proud of you for doing the right thing. Dad nodded approvingly, raising his wine glass in a toast. To family, supporting family the way it should be. But as the celebration continued around me, I felt compelled to establish some ground rules. There will need to be some boundaries, though. I work from home, so I need quiet during business hours. The home office stays off limits, and I'll need help with utilities and groceries since the household will double in size. Jennifer's smile faltered slightly, and she exchanged a quick glance with Marcus before responding. Of course. Eddie, whatever works best for everyone. We're just grateful to have a safe place for the children. Her tone was agreeable, but something about her body language suggested she was merely placating me. Marcus waved his hand dismissively, laughing like my concerns were silly. Come on, man, we're family. We don't need a bunch of rigid rules creating unnecessary stress between us. We'll all adjust naturally and figure things out as we go. The casual way he brushed off my boundaries sent a chill down my spine, but I told myself I was overthinking the situation. Sarah leaned close to my ear, her voice barely audible above the family chatter. Are you sure about this? 3 months is a long time to share your space. Her concern was valid, and I could see the worry in her green eyes, but I had already committed. It'll be fine, I whispered back, hoping I sounded more confident than I felt. Jennifer immediately began discussing logistics, with Mom pulling out her phone to show pictures of furniture she wanted to move in. The children's bedroom set is absolutely beautiful, and I found these amazing organizational systems that will help maximize the space. I'm thinking we could rearrange the guest room layout to accommodate both Ashley and Tyler comfortably. Wait, I interrupted, feeling my first wave of unease. You've already been furniture shopping. Jennifer laughed a sound that felt forced and artificial. Oh, just browsing online, you know how it is. A mother always wants the best environment for her children. I wanted to be prepared in case you said yes. Marcus added with a grin that seemed too wide. We also looked at some modifications for the guest bathroom. Nothing major, just making it more kid-friendly with some safety features and storage solutions. The fact that they had been making plans for my house without my knowledge felt like a violation, but everyone else seemed to think it was thoughtful preparation. Derek patted me on the back, his earlier criticism replaced with approval. See, I knew you'd step up. This is what family does for each other. Marcus is lucky to have a brother like you. The praise felt hollow, especially knowing it came only after I had bent to their collective will. As the evening wound down, Jennifer approached me with a notebook filled with measurements and sketches. I hope you don't mind, but I drove by your house last week and took some exterior photos to get a feel for the space. I wanted to make sure our belongings would fit appropriately. The revelation that she had been surveilling my property without permission made my skin crawl, but I forced a smile. When were you thinking of moving in? I asked, hoping for a few days to mentally prepare for the invasion of my sanctuary. Marcus and Jennifer exchanged another one of those loaded glances before Marcus answered. Well, we were hoping for this weekend, actually. The motel we're staying in is pretty expensive, and every day we wait is money we can't afford to spend. 3 days. I would have 3 days to prepare for my life to be turned upside down. Sarah's hand found mine again, and I could feel her tension matching my own. The reality of what I had agreed to was starting to sink in, and the warm feeling of family approval was quickly being replaced by a growing sense of dread. Mom walked us to the door, still glowing with pride over my decision. This is such a wonderful thing you're doing, sweetheart. Marcus and Jennifer are so lucky to have you, and those children need stability right now. Her words were meant to be comforting, but they felt more like chains binding me to a decision I was already starting to regret. As Sarah and I walked to my car, she finally voiced what we were both thinking. Something about this whole situation feels off, Eddie. The way they had everything planned out before you even agreed, the pressure from everyone to make you feel guilty. Promise me you'll be careful and document anything that seems wrong. I kissed her forehead, trying to project confidence I didn't feel. It's just 3 months, and they're family. How bad could it really get? The question hung in the cool night air like a prophecy, and I had the distinct feeling I would soon discover exactly how bad things could become when trust was misplaced and boundaries were ignored. The drive home felt longer than usual, and as I pulled into my driveway, I looked up at my peaceful 3-bedroom house with new eyes. In 72 hours, it would no longer be my private sanctuary. It would become a battleground where I would learn the hard way that blood relations don't guarantee respect, and kindness can be mistaken for weakness by those who choose to exploit rather than appreciate it. Moving day arrived like a storm I couldn't escape. I woke up early Saturday morning to the sound of a large truck rumbling into my driveway, followed by voices and car doors slamming. Looking out my bedroom window, I watched Marcus directing a crew of his friends as they unloaded box after box, furniture, piece after piece, far more belongings than I had expected for a family who supposedly lost everything. Jennifer appeared at my front door before I was even fully dressed, holding a set of paint swatches and a measuring tape. Good morning, Eddie. I hope you don't mind, but I brought some color samples for Ashley's room. The current beige is so depressing for a little girl, don't you think? She brushed past me without waiting for an answer, already heading upstairs like she owned the place. Jennifer, wait. I called after her, my voice still rough from sleep. We should probably discuss any changes before making them. This is still my house. She turned back with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Of course. But we're just making the space more livable for the children. Surely you want them to feel comfortable here. Marcus appeared in the doorway carrying a large television that was definitely newer and bigger than anything someone who just lost their job should be buying. Morning, bro. Hope you don't mind, but we need to set this up in the living room. The kids can't miss their Saturday morning cartoons. He was already walking toward my carefully arranged living room before I could respond. Actually, Marcus, I was hoping we could talk about placement of things. The living room is kind of my relaxation space after work. He laughed like I had told a joke. Come on, man, lighten up. It's not like you're using it 24/7. Besides, family spaces should be for the whole family, right? Within 2 hours, my entire downstairs had been transformed beyond recognition. Jennifer had rearranged all my furniture to accommodate their oversized sectional sofa, pushing my comfortable reading chair into a corner where it looked completely out of place. My coffee table had been replaced with a child-proof plastic one covered in cartoon characters, and my walls now displayed Jennifer's family photos instead of my carefully chosen artwork. The kitchen invasion was even worse. Jennifer opened every cabinet and drawer, reorganizing everything according to her preferences. I hope you don't mind, but I need to child-proof everything and create a more efficient system. Some of your food choices are really unhealthy, Eddie. I threw away those processed snacks and frozen dinners. Growing children need proper nutrition. I watched in stunned silence as she discarded groceries I had just purchased, replacing them with organic items that probably cost 3 times as much. Who's paying for all this new food? I asked, trying to keep my voice level. Jennifer looked genuinely confused by the question. Well, we're all family now, sharing the household expenses. I assumed you'd want the children eating well while they're staying here. My home office received the most aggressive makeover. Tyler and Ashley had already spread toys across every surface, and Jennifer was measuring the walls for what looked like playground equipment. This space is perfect for a children's activity center. They need somewhere stimulating to play and do their homework. My computer-important documents and work materials had been shoved into boxes and stacked in a corner. Jennifer, I work from home. I need this office for my job. I protested, feeling my frustration building. She waved her hand dismissively. Oh, you can work from your bedroom or the kitchen table. Flexibility is important when you're living with children. They need dedicated space more than adults do. Marcus emerged from the garage, wiping his hands on a towel. Bro, we had to move some of your stuff around out there to make room for our storage items. Hope that's cool. Some of this camping gear and holiday decorations can probably go into the attic anyway. I followed him outside to find my organized garage had become a warehouse for their belongings, with my tools and equipment pushed into whatever corners remained. The noise level was overwhelming. Ashley and Tyler ran through the house, screaming and laughing, their footsteps pounding on floors I had specifically chosen for their peaceful quietness. When Tyler accidentally knocked over a lamp I had inherited from my grandmother, Marcus shrugged apologetically. Kids will be kids, you know. Accidents happen. That's why I always tell people not to have nice things around children. The lamp wasn't broken, but the casual dismissal of my belongings and my feelings about them stung more than I expected. That lamp belonged to my grandmother, I explained quietly. Marcus patted my shoulder like he was comforting a child. And now it'll make new memories with the next generation. Grandma would probably love seeing kids playing around it. By evening, I felt like a stranger in my own home. Jennifer had taken over the kitchen completely, cooking an elaborate dinner while criticizing every appliance and utensil I owned. This cookware is really low quality, Eddie. I'll add some decent pots and pans to the shopping list. You can't expect me to prepare proper meals with these old things. Marcus had invited his friend Danny over to watch a football game, and they were drinking my beer while commenting loudly on every play. When I mentioned that I usually kept the TV volume lower, Danny laughed. Come on, man, it's football Sunday. You can't watch the game without some enthusiasm. Loosen up a little. The children were supposed to be in bed by 8 o'clock, but by 9:30 they were still running around hyped up on sugar from the candy Jennifer had given them. When I suggested they might need a quieter bedtime routine, she bristled. I don't need parenting advice from someone who's never had children, Eddie. Every family has their own rhythms and routines. Sarah texted around 10, asking if she could come over, but looking around at the chaos that had consumed my formerly peaceful home, I had to tell her it wasn't a good time. The disappointment in her response was clear, and I realized this arrangement was already affecting the most important relationship in my life. As I finally escaped to my bedroom, the only space that remained unchanged, I could hear Marcus and Jennifer talking in hushed voices downstairs. Their words were muffled, but their tones sounded conspiratorial, like they were planning something rather than settling in for the night. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to unfamiliar sounds in my house. Someone was moving around downstairs long after everyone should have been asleep, opening and closing drawers, moving furniture, having whispered conversations. The house that had been my sanctuary now felt like enemy territory, and I had the sinking realization that the next 3 months were going to test every limit of my patience and sanity. The worst part was the growing certainty that this arrangement had been carefully orchestrated, rather than the desperate emergency situation they had presented. The expensive television, the immediate furniture rearrangements, the detailed plans Jennifer had already made all pointed to a level of preparation that suggested this invasion had been planned long before that family dinner where they had cornered me into compliance. 2 weeks into the arrangement, my house had become unrecognizable. I woke up every morning to chaos that seemed to multiply overnight. Ashley and Tyler treated my home like their personal playground, leaving sticky handprints on walls, crayon marks on furniture, and mysterious stains on carpets that had been pristine just days before. My work-from-home routine became impossible. During important client calls, Tyler would burst through whatever room I was trying to use as a temporary office, screaming about some injustice involving his sister. When I tried to establish quiet hours, Jennifer accused me of being unrealistic about family life. Children can't be silenced like library patrons, Eddie. This is their home now, too, and they need to feel free to express themselves. The breaking point came during a crucial video conference with my biggest client. I had locked myself in my bedroom thinking it would provide enough soundproofing for the 30-minute presentation I had spent weeks preparing. 15 minutes in, Ashley came pounding on the door, sobbing about Tyler taking her favorite doll. When I didn't immediately respond, she started kicking the door and screaming at the top of her lungs. My client's face on the laptop screen shifted from professional attention to obvious irritation. Eddie, perhaps we should reschedule when you have a more appropriate environment for business discussions. The call ended abruptly, and I knew I had probably lost not just that project, but future opportunities with their company. When I confronted Jennifer about the incident, she turned it around completely. Maybe if you had explained to Ashley that Uncle Eddie was working, she would have understood. Children respond to communication, not locked doors and rejection. Marcus nodded in agreement, adding, "Besides, bro, family emergencies always come first. Clients will understand if you explain this situation." The financial burden was crushing me. My grocery bills had tripled, my utility costs skyrocketed, and Jennifer had somehow gotten access to my streaming accounts, upgrading them to premium packages for better children's content. When I brought up the need for them to contribute financially, Marcus looked genuinely offended. "I'm between jobs, Eddie. You know that. Every penny we have is going toward getting back on our feet. I thought you understood this was temporary assistance, not a business arrangement," Jennifer added with wounded pride. "We never asked you to change your lifestyle or spending habits for us. If having family here is too expensive, maybe we should look for other arrangements." The guilt manipulation was masterful, making me feel selfish for expecting basic consideration about my own household expenses. But the financial pressure was real, and my savings account was draining faster than I could have imagined. My relationship with Sarah reached a critical point when she came over unannounced one evening, hoping we could have a quiet dinner together. She found Marcus's poker buddies occupying the living room, Jennifer redecorating the guest bathroom without permission, and the children using my bedroom as a fort-building location because their room was too messy. "This is insane, Eddie," Sarah said quietly as we stood in my garage, the only space where we could have a private conversation. "You're being taken advantage of and you're letting it happen. This isn't temporary housing assistance. This is a hostile takeover of your life." I knew she was right, but admitting it felt like acknowledging I had been played for a fool. "It's just until Marcus finds work. I can handle 3 months of inconvenience for family." Sarah's expression shifted to something I had never seen before, a mixture of disappointment and frustration that cut deeper than anger would have. "Eddie, look around you. Really look. Does this seem like people who are grateful for temporary help, or does it seem like people who are systematically taking over your space, your finances, and your life?" Her words hung in the air between us like an ultimatum, and I realized she was asking me to choose between my family's manipulation and our relationship. When I hesitated, unable to immediately defend what was happening, Sarah's face fell. "I can't do this anymore. I can't watch someone I love being destroyed by people who claim to care about him. Call me when you decide what matters more." She walked away, leaving me standing alone in my own garage, surrounded by other people's belongings, feeling more isolated than I had ever felt in my life. That night, things escalated beyond anything I could have anticipated. I discovered Jennifer in my bedroom, not just cleaning, but going through my personal documents, bank statements, and mail. She was sitting on my bed with a calculator, apparently adding up numbers from my financial papers. "What are you doing?" I demanded, my voice sharper than I intended. Jennifer looked up with a startled expression that quickly shifted to defensive indignation. "I was organizing your paperwork, Eddie. It was scattered all over your desk, and I thought I could help you create a better filing system." The lie was so blatant it took my breath away. My desk had been perfectly organized, and my financial documents had been in a locked drawer that I now noticed had been pried open. "Those are private financial records, Jennifer. You have no right to go through them." Marcus appeared in the doorway, immediately taking his wife's side. "Come on, man, she was trying to help. We're all family here. There shouldn't be secrets or off-limits areas between us." His casual dismissal of my privacy rights made my blood boil, but worse was the realization that they had been systematically violating my personal space and boundaries since day one. "This ends now," I said, my voice steady despite the rage building inside me. "I want you out of my house by the end of the week." The reaction was swift and coordinated, like they had prepared for this moment. Jennifer burst into tears. Marcus looked wounded and betrayed, and within minutes, both children were crying because Uncle Eddie doesn't want us here anymore. The family phone calls started immediately. Mom called in tears, begging me to reconsider. Dad's voice was cold with disappointment, questioning my character and commitment to family values. Aunt Patricia accused me of being heartless and selfish, while Uncle Robert suggested I had lost my way and needed professional help to understand the importance of family loyalty. But the worst part was the realization that this whole situation had been carefully orchestrated from the beginning. As I stood in my violated bedroom looking at evidence that they had been planning to exploit my kindness and financial resources far beyond the temporary assistance I had agreed to provide, I understood that my family had enabled and participated in an elaborate manipulation that had nearly destroyed my life, my relationship, and my financial security. The 3-month temporary arrangement had been a lie from the first conversation. They had never intended to leave, and they had been systematically working to establish permanent residency while dismantling every aspect of my independence and personal autonomy. The worst part was knowing that if I hadn't caught Jennifer going through my financial records, they might have succeeded in their plan to essentially steal my life while making me feel guilty for resisting. Sleep became impossible after discovering Jennifer's violation of my privacy. I lay awake replaying every interaction, every subtle manipulation, every red flag I had ignored. By dawn, I knew I needed to understand exactly what I was dealing with before making any moves that could backfire. My first stop was my bank, where I requested detailed statements going back 6 months. What I discovered made my stomach turn. There had been attempts to access my accounts using personal information that only someone with access to my home and documents could have obtained. Failed login attempts, credit inquiries I hadn't authorized, and even an application for a credit card in my name that had been denied due to suspicious activity. The bank security officer, Maria Rodriguez, reviewed my account with growing concern. "Mr. Thompson, someone has been systematically attempting to gain access to your financial information. These patterns suggest identity theft in progress. Have you shared your personal information with anyone recently?" I explained the living situation, and Maria's expression grew grim. Family members are actually the most common perpetrators of identity theft because they have easy access to personal documents and information. I strongly recommend you file a police report and put a fraud alert on all your accounts immediately. Next, I visited my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Patterson, who had lived on our street for 40 years. She welcomed me with coffee and homemade cookies, but her expression grew serious when I asked about any unusual activity around my house before Marcus moved in. "Oh, honey, I've been meaning to talk to you about that. About 3 weeks before they moved in, I saw that woman, your brother's wife, walking around your property multiple times. She was taking pictures of your windows, measuring things, that even tried your front door handle when she thought no one was looking." Mrs. Patterson's revelation confirmed my worst suspicions. She also had a man with her one day who looked like a locksmith. They were examining your locks and discussing something about keys. I thought maybe you had hired them for security work, but it seemed odd that you weren't home. The pieces of their plan were becoming clearer, and each revelation made me angrier at my own naivety. My next stop was the local courthouse, where public records revealed a shocking pattern. Marcus had a history of civil lawsuits from previous landlords for property damage, unpaid rent, and something called unlawful detainer, that apparently meant he had tried to claim tenant rights in situations where he had no legal standing. Jennifer's record was even more disturbing. She had restraining orders filed against her by 3 different neighbors in 2 different states, all related to harassment, property damage, and what one filing described as systematic intimidation and exploitation of vulnerable individuals. There were also records of her using multiple aliases and addresses, suggesting a pattern of fraudulent behavior spanning several years. The most shocking discovery came from my cousin Derek, who I called under the pretense of general family conversation. When I mentioned how stressful the housing situation had become, Derek's response floored me. "Wait, Marcus is staying with you, Eddie. That guy burned through everyone in the family before landing at your place. He lived with Grandma Rose for 2 years before she died, basically emptying her savings account for his supposed business ventures. After the funeral, we found out he had been forging her signature on checks and had even tried to change her will." Derek's voice grew angry as he continued. "Then he moved in with Aunt Patricia, telling her the same sob story about needing temporary help. She finally kicked him out when she caught Jennifer stealing her jewelry and Marcus using her credit cards. That's the real reason Patricia moved to Florida, Eddie. She was trying to escape the legal and financial mess they created." The revelation that my family knew about Marcus and Jennifer's pattern of exploitation made their pressure campaign even more sinister. They hadn't been trying to help Marcus. They had been trying to find someone new for him to victimize. And I had been the chosen target. Armed with this information, I made a decision that would change everything. I called a locksmith and had all my locks changed, then contacted a security company about installing cameras throughout my house. But first I needed to check something that had been nagging at me since the day they moved in. In my basement, tucked behind the water heater, I found the security system I had installed 2 years earlier after a break-in attempt in the neighborhood. The system had been recording everything, storing footage on a hidden server that I had completely forgotten about in the chaos of the past few weeks. Sitting at my laptop in the local library where I knew I wouldn't be interrupted, I accessed the security footage from the past month. What I saw made my hands shake with rage and vindication. Hours of recorded conversations between Marcus and Jennifer discussing their plans with the casual cruelty of predators who had found the perfect victim. In one particularly damaging recording from their second night in my house, Jennifer's voice was clear as she talked on the phone with someone I couldn't identify. Marcus was right about the family guilt thing. Eddie's such a pushover. We can milk this situation for at least a year, maybe longer, if we play our cards right. He's got way more money than Marcus thought, and he's too nice to fight back effectively. Marcus's voice joined the conversation as he entered the room. Did you see how easily he folded when everyone pressured him at dinner? This is going to be easier than the situation with Aunt Patricia. At least Eddie doesn't have other family members checking on him regularly. We can operate however we want here. Another recording showed them discussing plans to establish legal residency damage. My relationship, so I would be isolated and dependent on their version of events, and eventually claim adverse possession of my property through a complex legal process that would take years to resolve and cost me tens of thousands in attorney fees. The most chilling footage showed Jennifer coaching the children on what to say if anyone asked about their living situation. Remember, kids, Uncle Eddie invited us to live here permanently. If anyone asks, this is our home now, and Uncle Eddie said we never have to leave. Practice saying that until it sounds natural. But the recording that sealed their fate came from just 2 days earlier when they thought I was at work. Marcus was on the phone with someone laughing about their long-term plan. By the time Eddie figures out what's happening, we'll have established residency rights. Jennifer's already researched the laws. After 6 months, evicting us becomes a major legal battle, and Eddie doesn't have the backbone for that kind of fight. Jennifer's voice added the final piece of evidence I needed. Plus, if he tries to force us out, we'll claim he was inappropriate with the children. The family will side with us, and Eddie's reputation will be destroyed. He'll end up settling just to make the accusations go away. Sitting in that library watching hours of footage that revealed the depth of their betrayal and manipulation, I realized I wasn't just dealing with family taking advantage of my kindness. I was dealing with experienced con artists who had specifically targeted me because they knew I would be vulnerable to family pressure and emotional manipulation. The evidence was overwhelming, but more importantly, it was legally actionable. Every conversation had been recorded in my own home, where they had no expectation of privacy. Their plans constituted conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and extortion. The threats against my reputation and the coaching of children to lie were additional crimes that would interest law enforcement. For the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of power and control returning. They had underestimated me completely, assuming I would remain the passive victim they had planned to exploit. Instead, I now had everything I needed to not only remove them from my house, but to ensure they faced legal consequences for their actions. The question now wasn't whether I could fight back, but how strategically I wanted to deploy the nuclear option I had just discovered. Marcus and Jennifer had made the mistake of treating my home like their criminal headquarters, and every word of their conspiracy had been preserved in high-definition digital evidence that would destroy their carefully constructed victim narrative. The next morning, I drove to the law office of Patricia Chen, an attorney who specialized in real estate and family law. Her receptionist initially seemed skeptical about fitting me into her busy schedule, but when I mentioned identity theft, fraud, and recorded evidence of criminal conspiracy, Patricia cleared her afternoon calendar. Patricia reviewed my evidence with the focused intensity of a prosecutor building a case. The security footage particularly caught her attention, and she took detailed notes as we watched Marcus and Jennifer discuss their plans to destroy my life and steal my property. Eddie, what you have here isn't just grounds for eviction. This is evidence of multiple felonies. Patricia said, her voice grave with the implications. Identity theft conspiracy to commit fraud, extortion, child endangerment through coaching minors to lie to authorities, and attempted adverse possession through fraudulent means. These people aren't just taking advantage of family hospitality, they're career criminals. She outlined a strategy that would protect me legally while ensuring Marcus and Jennifer faced consequences for their actions. First, we file restraining orders based on the threats captured in your recordings. Then, we pursue criminal charges through the district attorney's office. Finally, we execute a legal eviction that will be ironclad because of their criminal behavior. But Patricia also warned me about the family dynamics I would face. Your family members who pressured you into this situation may have been manipulated, but they're also going to resist accepting that they enabled criminal behavior. You need to be prepared for them to initially side with Marcus and Jennifer until the evidence becomes undeniable. My next stop was the police station, where Detective Robert Sullivan took my statement and reviewed the evidence. His experienced eyes immediately recognized the patterns I had documented. This is sophisticated fraud, Eddie. These individuals have clearly done this before, and they'll do it again unless they're stopped. The evidence you've gathered is some of the most comprehensive I've seen in a family exploitation case. Detective Sullivan explained that family-based fraud was increasingly common and often went unprosecuted because victims were too embarrassed or emotionally manipulated to come forward. Your willingness to document this and press charges could prevent other family members from becoming victims. We've seen cases where these patterns continue for decades within family networks. The detective also revealed something that shocked me. We actually have an open investigation into Jennifer Martinez, which appears to be one of her aliases. She's wanted for questioning in a similar case 2 states away, where an elderly man lost his entire retirement savings to a scheme very much like what they were planning with you. Armed with legal backing and police support, I began the most difficult part of my counterattack, reaching out to family members who had been victims of Marcus and Jennifer's previous schemes. Aunt Patricia was initially reluctant to discuss her experiences, but when I explained what was happening and that I had evidence, she broke down in tears. Eddie, I've been carrying so much guilt about what happened with me and Marcus. I thought I was a terrible person for throwing family out on the street, but Jennifer stole my mother's jewelry items that had been in our family for 3 generations. When I confronted her, she threatened to claim I was an abusive guardian for the children. Patricia's story revealed the full scope of their manipulation tactics. They had convinced half the family that I was being unreasonable and cruel. Marcus played the victim so perfectly that even I started questioning whether I was overreacting. It wasn't until after they left that I discovered the stolen jewelry, the forged checks, and the credit cards they had opened in my name. Uncle Robert's conversation was even more revealing. Son, I owe you a massive apology. When Marcus lived with your grandmother, he had us all convinced that she was becoming senile and paranoid. Every time she complained about missing money or forged signatures, Marcus would shake his head sadly and talk about how hard it was to watch her mental decline. Robert's voice grew heavy with regret. After she died and we discovered the extent of the financial abuse, Marcus had already moved on to Patricia. We should have warned you, Eddie, but honestly, we were all so ashamed of being fooled that we didn't want to admit what had happened. We thought maybe he had learned his lesson and wouldn't do it again. The most surprising ally came from my cousin Derek, who had initially criticized me for hesitating to help Marcus. When I shared the evidence I had gathered, Derek's reaction was explosive. That manipulative piece of garbage, Eddie, I feel sick about pressuring you at that dinner. I had no idea about his history because everyone in the family was too embarrassed to talk about it openly. Derek became instrumental in my counterattack strategy. I'm calling everyone who was at that dinner and telling them the truth about Marcus and Jennifer. They need to know they were manipulated into pressuring you, and they need to understand the consequences of their actions. What happened to you is partially on all of us. While building my support network, I also had to address the immediate situation in my house carefully. I couldn't let Marcus and Jennifer know I was aware of their plans because that could prompt them to escalate their timeline or disappear before facing legal consequences. I continued my normal routine while secretly documenting additional evidence. Every financial discrepancy, every violation of my property, every manipulation attempt was carefully recorded and cataloged. I also set up new security cameras in areas they hadn't discovered, capturing even more incriminating conversations. The breakthrough came when I overheard Jennifer on the phone planning the next phase of their scheme. We need to move faster on establishing residency. I found the legal precedent we need, and if we can document 6 months of continuous habitation with mail delivery and utility payments, Eddie won't be able to evict us without a lengthy court battle. Marcus's voice joined the conversation with chilling calculation. And if he tries to fight it, we implement the nuclear option. Jennifer coached the kids perfectly on what to say about inappropriate behavior. Even if the allegations don't stick, the investigation alone will destroy Eddie's reputation and career. He'll settle just to make it go away. That recording was the final piece of evidence I needed. They weren't just planning to steal my property, they were prepared to destroy my life and reputation. If I resisted. The malicious calculation in their voices as they discussed false allegations of child abuse revealed the true depth of their criminal intent. I spent that evening making final preparations for the confrontation that would end this nightmare. All the evidence was organized, all the legal documents were prepared, and all the family members who had been previous victims were ready to support my claims with their own testimonies. Tomorrow I would call a family meeting under the pretense of discussing long-term living arrangements. But instead of negotiating with criminals who had infiltrated my life through emotional manipulation, I would present them with overwhelming evidence of their crimes and give them a choice between voluntary departure and criminal prosecution. The scared, guilty, confused person who had been manipulated at that anniversary dinner was gone. In his place was someone who had learned the hard way that kindness without boundaries isn't virtue, it's vulnerability. And Marcus and Jennifer were about to discover that their perfect victim had become their most dangerous adversary. As I reviewed the mountain of evidence one final time, I realized this confrontation would be about more than just removing criminals from my house. It would be about teaching my entire family the difference between supporting someone in genuine crisis and enabling manipulative predators who exploit love and loyalty for criminal gain. The war they had started with emotional manipulation and family pressure was about to end with legal consequences and criminal charges. And this time, the tears guilt trips and victim performances wouldn't work because I had their own recorded words proving everything they had done was calculated, premeditated, and criminal. Sunday morning arrived with the crisp clarity that comes after a long storm. I had spent the weekend making final preparations for the confrontation that would end this nightmare. Every piece of evidence was organized, every legal document was ready, and every family member who needed to hear the truth had been contacted. I called Marcus and Jennifer into the living room, my living room which they had transformed into their personal kingdom over the past month. I think it's time we all sit down and have an honest conversation about this arrangement and where we go from here. I said, my voice steady and calm. Marcus leaned back on my relocated sofa with the casual confidence of someone who thought he held all the cards. Sure, bro. What's on your mind? If this is about us staying longer than 3 months, we can work something out. Maybe we can contribute more to household expenses once I find steady work. Jennifer nodded with practiced sincerity, her face displaying the perfect blend of gratitude and concern. We're so appreciative of everything you've done, Eddie. The children have adjusted so well here, and we'd love to discuss making this a more permanent arrangement if you're open to it. I opened my laptop and connected it to the television they had installed in my living room. Before we talk about the future, I think we should review the present. I've discovered some things that concern me about this whole situation. The first video I played was from their second night in my house. Marcus and Jennifer's recorded voices filled the room as they discussed their plan to milk this situation for at least a year, and how I was too nice to fight back effectively. The color drained from both their faces as they heard their own words describing me as a pushover they could easily manipulate. Marcus tried to interrupt his voice, stammering with panic. Eddie, wait. You don't understand the context of that conversation. We were just frustrated and venting. We didn't mean any of those things. Jennifer attempted to support him, but her voice sounded hollow and desperate. Those recordings are private conversations taken out of context. You can't judge our feelings based on moments of stress. I paused the video and looked at them directly. Context. Let's talk about context. The next recording I played was Jennifer coaching Ashley and Tyler on what to say about their living situation, teaching them to claim this was their permanent home and that I had promised they never had to leave. Jennifer's face crumpled as she watched herself manipulating children into lying for her criminal scheme. "That's not what that was about," she whispered, but her protest lacked any conviction. The evidence was undeniable, and we all knew it. The third video showed Marcus laughing about their long-term plan to establish residency rights and how I didn't have the backbone for a legal battle. But it was the fourth recording that truly destroyed their ability to claim innocence. Their conversation about false allegations of child abuse using my reputation and career as leverage to force a settlement played out in horrifying detail. As their own voices described their plan to destroy my life if I resisted their criminal scheme, both Marcus and Jennifer sat in stunned silence. The masks of victimhood and family loyalty had been completely stripped away, revealing the calculating predators underneath. Now let's discuss some additional context. I continued opening a folder filled with legal documents. These are records of your previous schemes, Marcus. Grandma Rose's forged checks, Aunt Patricia's stolen jewelry, your history of fraudulent tenant claims, and Jennifer's outstanding warrants in 2 other states for identical scams. Marcus's attempt at denial crumbled immediately. How did you find out about all that? Those situations were completely different and some of those allegations were never proven. Jennifer remained silent, probably calculating whether she could still manipulate her way out of the consequences closing in around them. I pulled out the restraining orders that had been issued that morning. These are legal documents requiring you to vacate my property within 24 hours and prohibiting any contact with me afterward. Detective Sullivan from the Fraud Division will be here shortly to discuss criminal charges for identity theft, conspiracy, extortion, and child endangerment. The transformation was immediate and complete. Marcus's confident demeanor collapsed into desperate pleading. "Eddie, please, we're family. We made some mistakes, but we can fix this. Think about Ashley and Tyler. They don't deserve to be homeless because of our poor judgment." Jennifer's reaction was more calculating. She immediately shifted into damage control mode, trying to negotiate terms that would minimize their legal exposure. "What do you want, Eddie? We'll leave quietly if you agree not to press charges. The children have been through enough disruption already." "What I want," I said, standing up to hand them the eviction notices, "is for you to face the consequences of your actions. This isn't about revenge or family politics. This is about stopping criminal behavior before you destroy another family member's life." The sound of cars pulling into my driveway announced the arrival of the cavalry I had assembled. My parents entered, first followed by Aunt Patricia, Uncle Robert, and Derek. Behind them came Detective Sullivan and my attorney Patricia Chen, both carrying briefcases full of additional evidence and legal documents. Mom's face was streaked with tears, but they weren't tears of sympathy for Marcus anymore. She had spent the weekend reviewing the evidence I had shared with the family, and the magnitude of the manipulation became clear. "Marcus, how could you do this to your own brother? To your own family?" Dad's reaction was even more powerful. The man who had lectured me about family loyalty and stepping up like a real man now stood looking at his eldest son with a mixture of disgust and disappointment that cut deeper than any legal consequence could. "You're not the son I raised, Marcus. The son I raised would never exploit his brother's kindness or manipulate children into criminal schemes." Aunt Patricia confronted Jennifer directly, her voice shaking with a mixture of anger and vindication. "You stole my mother's jewelry, Jennifer. Heirloom pieces that had been in our family for 4 generations. I want them back, and I want them back today." Uncle Robert's gravelly voice carried the weight of accumulated family shame. "We failed Eddie by not warning him about your pattern of behavior. We were too embarrassed about being fooled ourselves to protect our nephew from the same exploitation. That changes today." Derek stepped forward with a box of items I hadn't seen before. These are things you left behind at Patricia's house, Marcus. Love letters between you and Jennifer where you discuss targeting weak family members and laugh about their pathetic need to be helpful. Apparently, criminal conspiracy is a family hobby for you too. Detective Sullivan's presence added official weight to the confrontation. Marcus Thompson and Jennifer Martinez, you're both under arrest for conspiracy to commit fraud, identity theft, and attempted extortion. You have the right to remain silent, and I strongly suggest you exercise that right until you speak with attorneys. The arrest process was swift and professional. As handcuffs clicked into place, Marcus made one final attempt at manipulation, appealing to our parents with tears and promises of redemption. Mom, Dad, please don't let them destroy our family over this misunderstanding. I'll get help, I'll change, just don't let Eddie press charges. But the damage was too extensive, and the evidence too overwhelming for emotional appeals to work anymore. Mom shook her head sadly, her voice barely above a whisper. The family was destroyed the moment you decided to treat your brother like a victim instead of family, Marcus. Eddie didn't destroy anything, he just exposed what you had already done. As the police cars pulled away with Marcus and Jennifer in custody, I felt a complex mixture of relief, sadness, and vindication. The immediate threat was over, but the work of rebuilding trust and relationships was just beginning. Patricia Chen outlined the legal proceedings ahead. The criminal charges would likely result in significant prison time given their previous offenses and the sophisticated nature of their current scheme. The civil lawsuit would recover my financial losses and establish legal precedent to protect other potential victims. The family meeting continued long into the afternoon as we processed the emotional aftermath of what had happened. My parents apologized repeatedly for their role in pressuring me into the arrangement, finally understanding how their good intentions had enabled criminal behavior. We thought we were helping family, Mom said through fresh tears. We had no idea we were feeding our son to predators who happened to share our last name. Dad's apology was equally heartfelt, acknowledging how his lectures about family loyalty had been weaponized against me by people who understood and exploited those values. Aunt Patricia shared details about her experience that she had previously been too ashamed to discuss. They made me feel crazy, Eddie. Every time something went missing or money disappeared, they had explanations that made me doubt my own memory and judgment. The psychological manipulation was worse than the financial theft. Uncle Robert revealed that several other family members had been approached by Marcus over the years with various schemes and sob stories, but most had declined to get involved. We should have recognized the pattern and warned each other. Instead, we all stayed silent about our individual experiences, which allowed them to continue targeting new victims. As evening approached, I walked through my house with new eyes. The physical damage could be repaired. The stolen items could be replaced and the financial losses could be recovered through legal action. But the deeper changes were permanent and positive. I had learned to distinguish between genuine family crisis and manipulative exploitation. I understood the difference between supporting someone in need and enabling criminal behavior. Most importantly, I had discovered that protecting yourself and your boundaries isn't selfish. It's necessary for maintaining the integrity that makes genuine help possible. Sarah arrived as the family meeting was ending, having been updated throughout the day about the developments. Her embrace felt like coming home after a long, dangerous journey. I'm so proud of you for fighting back, Eddie. I knew the real you was still in there somewhere. We spent the evening planning how to restore my home and my life. The guest rooms would be converted into a proper home office and an art studio spaces that reflected my actual interests and goals, rather than accommodating other people's demands. The security system would be expanded and updated not out of paranoia, but out of wisdom gained through painful experience. As we worked together, cleaning and reorganizing, Sarah asked the question that had been weighing on both our minds. How do you feel about Marcus and Jennifer facing prison time? I know they're still family, even after everything they did. I considered the question carefully before answering. I feel sad that it came to this, but I don't feel guilty about the consequences they're facing. They made calculated decisions to exploit and harm people who trusted them. The only way to stop that pattern is to ensure there are real consequences for their actions. The legal proceedings took several months to complete, but the outcomes were satisfying and comprehensive. Marcus and Jennifer both pled guilty to multiple felonies in exchange for reduced sentences that still included significant prison time. They were also required to pay full restitution for the financial damages they had caused, not just to me, but to previous victims whose cases were reopened based on the evidence we had uncovered. The civil lawsuit resulted in a substantial settlement that more than covered my losses and established a legal fund to help other family fraud victims pursue justice. More importantly, the case became precedent that was used to prosecute similar schemes in other jurisdictions. My relationships with extended family members evolved in positive ways, as we all learned to communicate more openly about problems and concerns. The shame and embarrassment that had previously kept us from sharing information about Marcus's behavior was replaced with a commitment to protecting each other from future exploitation. 6 months after the arrests, I received a letter from Marcus in prison. It was surprisingly honest, acknowledging his criminal behavior and expressing genuine remorse for the damage he had caused. While I appreciated the apology, I also recognized it might be another manipulation attempt, so I chose not to respond directly, but to hope that his apparent self-reflection was genuine. A year later, my house had been completely restored to being the sanctuary I had originally created. Sarah and I had grown closer through the shared experience of overcoming the crisis together, and we were making plans for our own future that included marriage and starting our own family. The most lasting impact was the wisdom I gained about family relationships and personal boundaries. I learned that real family love includes respect for each other's autonomy and well-being. People who demand you sacrifice your security, happiness, or integrity in the name of family loyalty aren't acting out of love, they're acting out of manipulation. I also discovered that standing up for yourself when you're being mistreated isn't selfish, or mean. It's necessary for maintaining healthy relationships with people who actually care about your welfare. The family members who truly loved me supported my decision to protect myself, while those who criticized me for refusing to be victimized revealed their own willingness to enable harmful behavior. Looking back on the experience, I realized the most important lesson wasn't about recognizing and stopping criminal behavior, though that was crucial. The deeper lesson was about understanding that kindness and generosity must be balanced with wisdom and self-protection to be truly sustainable and valuable. Today, when family members face genuine crises, I'm able to help them in ways that are both effective and appropriate, because I've learned to distinguish between supporting someone through difficulty and enabling destructive behavior. The boundaries I established after the Marcus situation have actually made me more helpful to people who genuinely need assistance, because I can offer support without becoming a victim myself. The house that was once invaded and violated is now a place where healthy family relationships flourish. Sarah and I host regular family dinners where everyone feels welcome and valued, but where respect and consideration are non-negotiable expectations. The children who visit know they're loved, but they also understand that love includes learning appropriate behavior and respecting other people's space and belongings. Sometimes people ask if I regret not trying to work things out with Marcus through family counseling or mediation instead of pursuing criminal charges. My answer is always the same. You can't negotiate with people who are committed to exploiting you, and enabling criminal behavior by avoiding consequences doesn't help anyone, including the criminals. The truth is that pressing charges and ensuring Marcus and Jennifer faced legal consequences for their actions was one of the most loving things I could do for them. Real change requires genuine consequences, and protecting them from the results of their choices would have guaranteed they would continue victimizing other people. My parents now understand this perspective and have become advocates for other family members who face similar exploitation. Dad's transformation from someone who lectured about family loyalty without limits to someone who teaches the importance of healthy boundaries has been remarkable to witness. Mom has channeled her nurturing instincts into volunteer work, helping elderly people avoid financial scams and family exploitation, using her experience with Marcus to educate others about the warning signs of manipulative behavior disguised as family crisis. The anniversary dinner where this all began is now remembered not as the night I was manipulated into a terrible situation, but as the night that ultimately led to our family learning healthier ways to love and support each other. The manipulation and exploitation that seemed so devastating at the time became the catalyst for building stronger, more honest relationships based on mutual respect rather than guilt and obligation. I learned that protecting yourself isn't selfish. It's necessary. Family love shouldn't come with the cost of your dignity, safety, or well-being. Real family supports your boundaries. They don't exploit your kindness. Sometimes the greatest act of love is saying no to people who would harm you. And sometimes the most protective thing you can do for people you care about is ensuring they face the consequences of their harmful choices. The most important realization was that the same qualities that made me vulnerable to manipulation, my desire to help family and my willingness to sacrifice for others, also gave me the strength to fight back when I finally understood what was really happening. Kindness isn't weakness when it's combined with wisdom and self-respect. Standing in my restored home today, surrounded by people who love and respect me, I know that the nightmare Marcus and Jennifer put me through was ultimately a gift. It taught me the difference between being loving and being a victim, between supporting family and enabling criminals, between keeping peace and maintaining dignity. That knowledge has made me a better person, a better partner, a better family member, and ultimately a better protector of the people and values that truly matter. The price of that wisdom was high, but the value of what I learned makes every difficult moment worthwhile. Have you ever found yourself in a situation where family loyalty conflicted with your own well-being? How do you balance helping loved ones with protecting yourself from being taken advantage of? I'd love to hear your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Thank you for listening to my story and for being part of this community where we can share these difficult but important life lessons. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help others who might be facing similar situations find it. Don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories and the lessons we can learn from them, and please share this with anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of healthy boundaries in family relationships. Remember, protecting yourself isn't selfish, and real family love includes respect for each other's autonomy and well-being. Take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in the next story.